I was driving down the street today and I spotted this and I wanted to share it with you. This is an unusual formation of a burl at the base of this eucalyptus tree. And I'm not even certain what species this is, possibly a Nichols peppermint. Possibly. Yeah, it smells like peppermint. It's a fairly common eucalyptus in our area. Sorry, I can't identify it just by looking at it here. But what I wanted to talk about was this burl, this growth at the base of the tree. And that's very uncommon. You don't normally see big burls like that. But if you ever get into a situation where you have to cut one of these trees down, don't discount these burls. There's another of the exact same species, and you can see that there isn't any burl growth on this one. Maybe a little bit on the side here. But you can see how it's entirely different. Usually the trunk will go directly into the ground. But what you've got here is quite valuable if you know what to do with it. If you sent this to a veneer mill, this could be worth an awful lot of money. Even if you were only able to cut it off flush to the ground. Ideally you want to dig it out because it's going to go underground a little bit. But burls are really, really valuable for a lot of reasons. The veneer industry prizes these things. And I'll show you a little bit more. Let me go back to the shop and we'll talk about this a little bit more, and I'll show you what I've done with this exact same kind of burl. Those are the same kind of tree, but there's no burls on those. Okay, now what a lot of you don't know about me, well, first off, most of you understand that I'm also a woodworker, not just an arborist. It's a hobby of mine. I really enjoy working with wood, especially the wood that I harvest myself and mill up or slice up. So we're talking burls today. I showed you a eucalyptus tree where the base had a significant burl on it. And we're in my office right now. I've got my own little separate office over here where I do my video work. And you just saw the front office where we do all of our bookkeeping, and I'll show it to you again real quick here. Look over my shoulder. Got samples of leaves on the walls. I've got my setup for my computers, the bookkeeping. This is Tree Service Central. I built this building. Anyway, long and the short of it is I'm also into veneer. And burls are frequently turned into veneers. So I'm going to show you my veneer room now. Okay, I turned on a brighter light so you can see some of this stuff in here. But what we've got right here are slices of eucalyptus burl. And these came exactly from what I just showed you on that tree. That was from the base of the tree. I put these on a bandsaw mill and I cut them down to about 1/8 of an inch. And they all shrank a little bit. But I cut them flat and they all curled. They all wrapped up. So you look at them and you say, well, what are you going to do with that now that they're all curled like that? You can't use them anymore. But let me show you this. If you're creative, you can make a wall sconce, or you can make a light or some sort of a artistic sculpture that uses the burl. This is also the same exact tree that I was just showing you. And let me show you one that I finished. And this is an art sculpture I did a few years ago. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a piece of that we'll call it veneer because it's cut real thin, but it's about, this particular one, I think I sanded it down quite a bit to make it real polished. And if you look on the underside here, I've attached this to another type of burl. This is a maple burl. And this is a figured walnut here. But yeah, I kind of like that. I thought about turning it into a lamp, and I just kind of like it as a sculpture piece. But let me go back into the veneer room. So in my office down the hill, I have part of my veneer collection. I have got mountains and mountains and mountains of veneer. I have so much veneer. At one time I had a warehouse full of veneer. And this is about half of it. I've got the rest of it in another spot. A lot of these I had to roll up because I didn't have room for them, so they'll have to be relaxed and flattened before I can use them. But I have veneers from all over the world, including rare and exotic veneers. This is something that you can't find anymore. I'm sorry there's plastic on here, but this is true Brazilian rosewood. This was obtained back in the 80s because I bought this collection of veneer from a company that went out of business back in the early 90s, and this is all pre-CITES banned wood, so this is all legal to have in this country. But I've got maples, I've got bubinga, I've got mahogany, I've got figured tree. Oh, look at this one. This is incredible. I wish I had a sample of this. I probably do somewhere. This is called a cluster. I call it Craters of the Moon walnut because of the way it's got these clusters on there. Truly, truly remarkable wood. This is also walnut, but we're talking burls. So veneers are cut quite thin. They're cut to about a 42nd of an inch thick, and they're not cut, they are sliced. They are put on a special machine with a veneer knife that is razor sharp. These things are boiled first to soften them up, and they're sliced sequentially. So every one of these pieces of veneer is an exact next cut for the piece in front of it. So this is about 3/4 of an inch of wood sliced into about 25 sheets of veneer. And this particular exotic cluster burl, this is a burl from Walnut, sells for about $8 a square foot. So each of these is about 2 square feet. So it's about $16 times 25 for 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch board here. And some of these veneers are very, very expensive. Now look at this one. This is a figured maple. Gorgeous, just gorgeous. Some of the most expensive, most valuable pieces of wood in the world are cut thin so they can be used in some of the finest furniture in the world. And don't discount veneered furniture as being cheap or less quality than solid wood furniture, because the wood that's applied to a substrate is often the best quality and the finest burls or the finest grades of lumber that you can get, so you get the best figure patterns. Now some veneers do not dry flat, and when you have a piece of wood that is taking on the natural curve again, you have to apply a flattening agent. There's a chemical that you can put together. It's based upon glycerin that you spray on the wood, and it absorbs into the wood, and it'll soften, it'll rehydrate the wood so that you can put it back into a press, and then you apply a flat surface to both sides, and then you put it into a press, either a screw down press, or in this case, this is a vacuum table. I put it in there, and you slowly let it relax and let it get down till it's flat. If you do it too fast, you'll crack it. But once you get it down so that it's flat, then you can put the pressure on it and let it sit overnight. And then when you pull it out, it will be flat. You can dry off any moisture on there. And at that point, you can apply it to a substrate, either a good quality plywood or an MDF, or, you know, these are ultralight MDFs, really, really smooth. This is veneer quality material here for applying these veneers. Oh, so look at that. That is just gorgeous. I love looking at this stuff. This one right here is also a burl. This is Amboyna Burl. This is one of the most expensive burls in the world. This sells for about $25 a square foot. So this is about a $35 piece of wood right here. See if I can focus that. Look at that. And little cracks and little voids, you just have to work around them. Sometimes you have to cut out pieces, you know, match a plug and put in a plug. Sometimes you have to do squiggle cuts. You piece these things together because this is the shape of the burl that was sliced. And this one stayed flat. For some reason, this one stayed flat, where the eucalyptus burl will curve up. So these are all kept in packets. And I have little flat packets down here. And every one of these flat packets has sequential matched veneers. And you want to keep them in sequence. You say, why do you need to keep them in sequence? Let me show you. All right, let's say I'm making an exotic jewelry box. I take 4 sequentially matched pieces of veneer, and this is what's known as a 4-way match. Most people know what a book match is, where you have 2 pieces that match up together. This is a 4-way match. Now, of course, I would have to trim it to get rid of all the imperfections, and I'd trim all 4 of them at the same time, so I have 4 perfectly straight lines. And then I would attach them with veneer tape so they're uptight, and then I'd put a blue tape on the other side so that they're held really tight. Actually, I'd start with the blue tape, and then I'd do the veneer tape, then take off the blue tape and apply an adhesive, a glue, to the substrate. Then I put this down to the side just before I take the blue tape off, and then I put that on there with a press piece on top, so it's flat on the bottom and flat on the top. I put it in the veneer press overnight, make sure that there aren't any bubbles in it, and it will dry just like magic into solid looking wood, but with that kind of a pattern on it. So these pattern matches are really, really valuable. And if you look at old furniture, you'll often find pattern matches like this, but it's not quite so common anymore. It's almost a lost art. You know, here's an example of a 4-way match with 4 knots in it. Look at this wood. This is called Waterfall Bubinga. See if I can focus that. That is just incredible wood. It looks 3-dimensional, but remember, it's only a 42nd of an inch thick, but it looks like waves. You can see these are all samples that are glued down to a solid substrate. There's a highly figured piece of, that's mahogany. There's another piece of mahogany. This is olive. This is a book match. And you can see that this is just 2 slices. And this was a thicker veneer that I cut on the bandsaw. And I sanded them both flat and I matched them up this way. And this is a beautiful, beautiful piece of wood. Actually, a friend of mine did that for me, John Burt. If you don't know John Burt, look him up in my video collection. All right, this is some of that Craters of the Walnut veneer, and you can see it's very, very thin, but the figure pattern is just exquisite. And then I've got my little room in the back here where I do marquetry, and I'll show you some of that. Marquetry is where you cut out pictures in wood and you apply them to the back surface, and you'll cut them out and you'll take them and you'll cut them at an angle so they drop in, and you keep adding to them. This is my little jigsaw here. This is my Marquetry Toolbox. These are all the tools that I use just for working marquetry. This is for sand shading. Sand shading is when you put little bits of shadowing on the edges of the work that you're doing. Here's a couple of samples of some of the pieces that I've been working on. This one, let's get a little closer on this one. You see the little darkening on the vein here? That's sand shadowing. Right in through there, a little bit in through there. See that little bit on the cherry right there? That was dipped in hot sand, so it burned. And then I cut this one on top of it, but you see I burned the edge of that a little bit as well. There's another little test piece. That's a eucalyptus leaf. It's funny, we all started with eucalyptus, so I'm going to finish on eucalyptus. And here's a piece that is quite thin. It's only about a 1/16 of an inch thin. And it is a 4-way match of walnut. And I used some of the lighter wood in the center to create kind of this diamond pattern. And what this will ultimately be is something with some marquetry into it. I'm not sure whether it'll be some foliage, but I did the background for that. And this is showing you a piece of how thin, it's like paper, but it's solid wood. It's solid wood on both sides. Some of you have seen paperback veneer that you can buy in the stores, but if you go to a professional veneer supplier, this is what you'll get. Now, for years, I sold veneer. and I've kind of gotten out of it, but if any of you are interested in veneers, contact me or go to my website, go to SaratogaTreeService.com and click on the veneer link and you'll see what's available. I've got all kinds of veneers. I've kind of stepped back from it for a while when I lost my warehouse. I got out of the business, but I kept a lot of the wood for my own hobby purposes. This is another interesting type of veneer strip that you can purchase. I've got a whole bunch of these. These are inlay strips that are really, really exotic. They're just beautiful. But you can set them into the wood. There you go. That's an example. So you can really embellish a simple piece of furniture quite simply, either routing or grooving a section the same thickness and gluing this in and clamping it in and then sanding the whole thing down, and it becomes nice and solid. Can't even feel it. It's really quite a remarkable process. Oh, here's another one. Here's a pattern here. See, this is still glued up. This is not even put onto a substrate yet. This has got the veneer tape on the back side. I took the blue tape off on this side. So this is actually quite exotic. This is a English sycamore, which is a type of maple. This is not to be confused with the plane tree. The sycamore in the United States is different than this. I don't know why they do that, but over in Europe, a sycamore is a maple. Over here, it's a plane tree. So this is a highly figured piece of English sycamore, which is how it's purchased. And when this is finished, it has a luminosity. It's got a chatoyance. It's a refractive quality that just makes it really, really pop out at you. Well, that's that, and hope you enjoyed my little tour of my hobby. It's kind of a compulsive hobby that's sort of grown to a life of its own. But if any of you guys out there are interested in veneer, please go to my website. You'll see all the veneers that I have, and once you get into it, it's very, very addictive.